Welcome back to POE. Today we're going to be talking about if statements. Some things I want to be pointing out to you here with an if statement is, and some of you guys have already done this, gotten to it, and some of you have not, but an if statement, after the if statement, all right, after your if statement, you're going to have the condition. All right. Just like when we did our while, you're going to have a condition. For our if statement, you're going to have a condition as well. An if statement is an explanation of if else statement is an expansion of if statements. Having thought about this, let's go back and point some other things out. With this, something that some students are struggling with are the brackets. You guys are going to have brackets um, with your while. So up here, you might have your while. You got your bracket in front of you, and then you have your while statement. And then you're going to, because this right here is basically, it's a program within a program. You're saying if, and then you've got this brackets inside here. Then you've got some command happening, and you've got a bracket, and then we've got to have a bracket out here for the end of the while statement, and then we've got to have a bracket out here for the end of the program, the overall program. If you had another while statement, then you'd have to go through this whole process here again. What I want you to understand then is, and my drawings are not great ones here, but essentially you'll have a beginning, a left bracket, and at the end, what we really have here is a right bracket, and a left bracket, and this right here is a right bracket, and then inside here as well, you have left and right brackets. And that's something you need to be checking when you're doing your programming, because if those don't match up, then your program's not going to work very well. It's going to not compile and download for you. If else statements. Again, notice the same things I want to point out to you as we get ready to do these. Is our program. We got a left bracket and a right bracket for whatever command to be putting in there, and a left bracket and a right bracket. Things I want to point out to you here with this else statement. There's no condition after the else. All right, there's no condition after the else. You still could have a command right here, but there's nothing after the else. Be careful when using two separate if-else statements, particularly if both are used to control the same mechanism. One branch of each if-else statement is always run so that you may create a scenario where the two statements fight one another. All right? That's not what you want to have happen. There's been a couple times where a couple of you guys have had, at one point in your program, you're telling the motor to turn on if it's less than or equal to something, and then later on, again, you're telling it to turn off if it's less than or equal to that same value. And basically, you're fighting yourself with your programming. All right. In this example, if one of the touch sensors is pressed, the right motor will be turned on in one if-else statement and immediately turned off in the other. And this is exactly what I was talking about. In this, we have multiple if-elses, and in this statement, they're telling if the bumper's pressed, the sensor value, turn the motor on. All right. And then down here, else, right, stop the motor. So basically, what's going to happen here is if the bumper is not pressed, then down here you're going to stop the motor. You're fighting yourself here at all times. All right, you're going to be fighting yourself here with these two parts right here. I want to point out to you again here that we have the left bracket, and then down here we have a right bracket. We have a left bracket and a right bracket. Oh, sorry, left bracket and right bracket here for the if statement, a left bracket and right bracket for the else statement, left and right for the if, left and right for the else. And notice that there is a match, a yin and a yang, or a right and left for each one of these. Whenever you use an if statement, make sure you're using a sensor value, and then you're telling it what the sensor is, and then make sure you have it set equal to something. Down here, sensor limit switch. All right, the limit switch, you're telling it to make sure it has a value. Okay, here's how they fixed it. What they've done, and I like the wording they use here. They talk about embedding. They've embed in the, and they what this embedding means is they've put it within the brackets of the first else statement. They took this one that we had before. I'm going to pull it up. Notice that this if else was its own separate one. It was not put inside this if statement right here, or inside this else statement. It's its own separate if. So you've got these two other ones. What they do in this second one is they take this and they insert it into this else statement, is what you're going to see here. All right. And this is really what they wanted to do. What they're saying here is if the bumper switch is equal to 1, then start the right motor half speed. Else, if it's not, if the bumper switch isn't taking control, then let's look at the sensor value. If the sensor value, if the limit switch is set to 1, then start the motor in the opposite direction. Or not or, but else, if it's not set to 1, then stop it. But this is all a part of that else statement. One of the things that I want to show you right now. All right, one of the things I want to point out to you here, and I'm going to do it all in the same color, is quite often, that we have the bracket here. And a lot of us start typing right here. What I would advise you guys to start doing, and this is going to kind of organize your stuff a little better, is not start typing until the very next column. And think of it like an outline. So if I was to be doing an if statement, and I had something here, if, well then I'm going to have this bracket here. Whatever I wanted to do, I would start right here at that same level. This is a second level, all right, it's like I've tabbed over, all right, and I've got something here. So if I wanted it here, I might say, what's the last example they go? Sensor value, all right, if sensor value, yada, 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 we might tell it, as they say here, start motor. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have start the motor be here, telling it which motor. A lot of us like to start this clear over here. And if you start to keep these things in line with the programming that they're a part of, it makes it a whole lot easier. And then I'd have my right bracket there, so I have my left bracket, my right bracket, and I might have my else here, and else no command here, and I have my left bracket, and then I might say stop motor, turn LED on, yada 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 yada, and I got my right bracket here. But what I want you to see here is I've got these rows now. We've got these rows where we're starting to have a program, one program after another. Or it's not drawing it here. There we go. If I embedded something in this else statement, then I would move it over now to one more row. If I were to do another if else, I would start it here. Let me know that it's a sub, all right, kind of like an outline. It's a part of this else statement. Don't bring it clear over here. Embed it. Now the reason we say it's embedded, even if I do bring it all the way over here, it's still embedded because it's within what's going to be this set of brackets. But it's just a little bit easier to read and understand if I take it clear over here to the right. Okay, here, using a range of values in a condition. For example, and I've talked about this, how the potentiometer could be used as like an accelerator or a gas pedal for the motor. You could set it up so from like 0 to 500, you have a motor speed of 0. 501 to 1,000, you have a motor speed of 63. 1,001 to 4,095, for lack of better terms, could be full out. And what we've done now is we've created this variable speed. Okay, here's a way that you could set this up. We have an if, the knob. Now what they've done here with this knob, and this is going to create some confusion, is in the motors and sensors setup, they've called the potentiometer, for lack of better terms, a knob. But this is just the potentiometer here. They've just called it the knob, so they can make reference to anything they want to call it. What they're saying here is when the knob is less than 500 or greater than 500 and the sensor value is less than or equal to 1,000, it's going to run the motor at half speed. It'll run it when it's greater than 1,000, it's going to rate it to 127. Well, this is true only if the sensor value is more than 500 and less than 1,000. These four comparisons waste time here each loop. A better way to do this, as we can see, is nested if-else. Well, you guys may not get to this if-else. If you only get to this, that's pretty gosh darn good, to be honest with you. But if you get to this, you are really starting to move somewhere. But you could do the exact same thing with an else-if statement, not if-else, sorry. Hey, that's it for today. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.